Hey guys, I wanted to hop on really quick and make a few notes, specifically with regards to formatting your references, as well as some tips on how you can format your paper. That way your um, brief report can be squeezed into the 2 pages that it ideally should be in. Um, so on some of your papers, you guys were putting your name. This is a project that I had for a class, so I'm just using it as an example. But some of you did the whole like, I'm gonna put my name and then the professor and then the class and then the date, right? Which is a typical MLA format thing that we do. And then maybe you also added a title like Brief Report 1, right? 1, right? And then you have a space down. You can, I recommend you guys use the ruler on the side in Word if you're using Google Docs. I guess it's a little bit harder, but everyone in this class should have access to the online version of Word, so you can always use that as well. But this takes up space and thus pushes your content downwards. So what I was recommending to some people is to use the header space. That is a part of the margins technically. So on the left side, you could put your name. If you tab, you can see like these little markers are kind of already set. If you tab inwards, you can put the title. So if this was Brief Report 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. And then on the side, you can put what class this is for. Right, so it's a very easy identifier of who the paper belongs to, what the assignment is, and which class it goes to. So that's acceptable if you want to add that information to cut down on, or to save some space at least. The other thing that I was noticing is that your guys' pages are supposed to be double spaced. So if we changed that here, there are default settings, I know, in Word specifically, where there will be like a little extra gap when you space your content down. So instead of being, like if I space this down, instead of being directly double spaced how it is now, you might have an extra space existing. This is a really cool trick that I learned quite some time ago. But there's a default setting in Word where it will automatically add an extra bit of space when you start a new paragraph. So what you can do is if you don't want, like if I wanted this spacing to be exactly double spaced, you just highlight the section between one paragraph and another paragraph. And if you go to the paragraph section in Word, there's line spacing options. And usually what Word will do is it will insert like an 8-point before or after. So that way you get, and I changed it back to single space. But you'll get this, you can see now there's an extra space here. But I can't actually edit that space. So in order to get rid of things like this, you just change the line spacing option so that the before and after are 0. If we wanted this to be double, you can change that too, right? But that's kind of one way to get around those extra spaces that seem uneditable but actually are editable. So that's one trick I wanted to share. Another thing I wanted to share is references. So the reference page should be alphabetized by first author's last name, as you can see here. Also, this is always a very difficult thing to put into words, but anything other than the first line of the reference should be indented to a 1/2 inch, which is the regular tab function that you have on your computer. So when I click on the first line, and these are formatted with a citation generator, so I don't know if I'll be able to edit these the way I want to, but when I click on this first line, you can see that my margin marker is at the edge of the page, or where my one margin kind of area would begin. And then if I click on this second line, you can see that there's a 1-inch indent on this bottom slider. So if you're ever writing stuff and it automatically kind of just like lines itself up on that 1-inch margin line, you can slide this thing here and that will change where your text goes. If you click the little square, that shifts the entire segment. Okay, so you actually want to click on the arrow. And I believe there's a similar kind of formatting of the ruler in Google Docs if you're using Google Docs. It might just be a little bar instead, but the concept is pretty much the same. So make sure you have those indented, as that is a part of APA format. In terms of actually formatting your references, I would recommend that you guys just use your syllabus, because all of your readings have been assigned, and in each week all of these sources are listed in APA format. So any reading that you have decided to put into your brief report, you literally can copy. Say I wanted to use the Swigard reference, I can paste it in here, right? Match my destination formatting so it's the way that I want it. And then all I have to do from here is change the indenting, right? And I'm good to go. And then all you have to do is actually alphabetize, and then that would be the last step. But this would be super easy. You don't have to look at citation generators. You don't have to look at the APA website to figure out how to format everything. They're already formatted for you. So use your resources to your advantage, is I guess what I'm trying to say. You can also use citation generators that work within Word. So I use one called Zotero. It's an application that you can download from Google Chrome. You can also add an extension in Chrome, so that way if you are, let's say we want to look up the little Chatfield popped up first. So let's look up the Chatfield data, or the Chatfield article, right? So in the library, you can view the item. And then what Zotero will do is it will add, if I hover over this, you can see Save to Zotero, right? If you click on that, it will actually add, if I want to add it somewhere else, I'll just add it to the library. It will add the citation for you, and more often than not, it saves things the way that it should. So that way, after you save it to your library, in your paper, if you wanted to add an InText citation, we could say Chatfield, and you'll see that this pops up. It'll, get the citation correct or whatever. Sometimes you have to make modifications, but generally it works pretty well. So, like this one didn't grab the appropriate name of the author. So you could go into that citation, change that information, and then for the citation, after that has been adjusted, Oh, it didn't take it. Enter maybe? There it is. So now that name has been changed, and now it would be entered in as Chatfield 2009, right? And then you have your InText citation already formatted. One thing that you can also emphasize with your citations using this program is what format you want. So APA is the American Sociological Association, or not that, American Psychological Association. So you can change which format you want to use, and that will make sure that your citations are correct. I was using AMA for this one, so I'm going to switch it back because I wanted to use superscripts. But those are some things to consider if you wanted to use a citation generator within Word. I don't know if it works in Google Docs, though, so that would just be something to be cautious about. The other thing to note when you're using citations is anytime you are grabbing information from a source that is not your original idea, you need to cite. Typically, what you do is a sandwich citation, especially for the type of writing that you guys are doing, since you're kind of clumping all of your reference to a particular resource into a half page. So a sandwich citation would be something like, oh, we have a statement from the article, and then we add a citation at the beginning, and then up until the end of whatever your reference is for that article. So let's say I was done referencing one article at this point, I would put a citation or an InText citation for that article at the end. So I'm kind of sandwiching and saying that any content that exists between these two citation markers is going to be a reference to the main article of interest, right? And so sometimes you can, make blanket statements and saying, like in this one, I'm like, the prevalence of ankle foot injuries have been reported as blah, 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 blah. And then I would put the author name and year. If you say, according to Chatfield, ... then you only need the year in the citation. So these are things that are specified in the APA format. I believe they are online. So if you do a quick Google search of like APA format, I think the OWL Purdue website is kind of the go-to website for any APA formatting notes that you might have. And they have an entire InText citation area. So that way you make sure you are citing everything appropriately. You don't always need to note the titles. So like you guys can see in this example of writing, I just make a blanket statement. I don't say in whatever this article is. What is it? I don't say in Foot and Ankle Injuries in Dance by Cadell, right? That's a significant amount of words. So try to save up your words by just making a blanket statement by, saying like, according to this author, these are the things that are true. And then you're kind of good to go. The last thing I want to mention is just make sure that you are pulling everything back together with at least one sentence that is kind of tying in how your summary relates to an area in dance. So some of you maybe were looking at like properties of motion or principles of motion or something like that. Saying something as simple, or maybe the chapter was talking about like, what is force? What are like kinetics and kinematics, and how do people adapt to forces? How do they generate forces? Like, I'm just pulling stuff out of my butt right now. But if that's what your chapter was on, right? Make sure you tie it back into how that's important to dance. Okay, so if we know that generation of forces comes from our muscles, right? And we adapt to external forces by using our muscles, because everything has an equal and opposite reaction. That's one of the laws of physics, according to Newton's laws of physics, anyways, right? If everything has an equal and opposite reaction, forces, or the study of forces, can inform dancers about how they might be at risk for injury, or kind of approaching certain movements with a more, I don't know, critical evaluation. Like if you're looking at landing mechanics and making sure that your knees aren't falling inwards, because that has a direct relation to force absorption, could place improper or excessive amounts of force on, like the outer portion of your knee, which could lead to injury or overuse or stress fractures or ligament tears or right? So just make sure you're tying in what the relevance is. And relevance doesn't necessarily need to be in a personal opinion. Remember that you are trying to kind of blanket this information to the dance community, whether you're looking at teachers, whether you're looking at students or performers, if you're looking at kind of the betterment of dance research in general, right? You want to just make sure that it's not just relevant to you, but it's relevant to the dance community. And I think that's kind of like my last bit. If you guys have questions on any of this, or if you want to meet over a Zoom meeting to kind of go over some of the things that I was showing in Word, I'm happy to do that. I won't be grading your brief report too. Like, obviously you didn't have this feedback before you wrote brief report 2. So more or less, like, the reports will be graded kind of fairly similarly, but a little bit more lenient in terms of point deductions, because you already have this feedback. But yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. You guys are doing a fantastic job, so just keep pushing. We are almost done.